Ashley Thorpe has cut his own animated groove in the world of horror. He has loads of credits and a feature film under his belt, of which more later. And he still leads animation programs in his hometown of Exeter. We caught him just at the end of a session, and before we talked about horror and Film Fest Hell Tor, we wondered what keeps his own creative spark alight. My name's Lee Morgan, and this is Insight from D&CFilm.
I still get that funny little moment when the light goes on. I think because, I discovered animation at university and I wasn't supposed to be studying it. It was just like a little side module. And yet from the second that I made this weird little creature out of string and seashells and all sorts of rubbish that I had lying around and then saw it move, I had that Ray Harryhausen moment where I just thought, wow, that's like magic. And that was it. I was hooked. Every single one of my films at uni had animation in it after that. But I still get it now. I still get it where a client will ask me to do a specific thing and I'll try it, not really knowing if it's going to work. And then there's that moment where it does work and you look at it and just think, I've made something that surprised myself. I love that feeling. And I don't get it all the time. But still regularly, there'll be these moments where I think, I'm going to try this crazy technique and see if it works. And when it does work, you do sit and go, yeah, that's great.
There's layered personality in Ashley's work. There are nooks and references and depth that point to his history and his heritage.
I still do that in everything. Everything that I do, I work some weird little reference or some reference to something else I've done. I mean, the uncanny title sequence is full of nods to Borley Rectory and things like that. There's a moment at the beginning of that where there's an ink stain that spreads faintly in the background, and it draws the building plan of the rectory. There's little screaming faces that reference like Pink Floyd's The Wall in the wallpaper, and there's like friends and family in there. There's bits of graffiti that referencing monsters and ghosts and scripts I've written. I mean, it's, you kind of like layer all this stuff up in there, and that's what makes it fun. And I do it in the uncanny art as well. Quite often there'll be little subliminal details that if you look really carefully, like the uncanny post-mortem artwork that came out last Halloween, I think. There's all these kind of, like, again, it's like inks, stains and things making sort of spectral shapes and things like that. But there was also, they wanted to have little faint maps. So the map that you see is a segment of a map of Exeter where I grew up. It's just the area down by Barton Fields. And that's in the uncanny artwork that goes out across, nationally, internationally. That's the place where I grew up. So that's the area I'm going to have in the background. And it's going to be all about me referencing stuff that I know. I think it's because I still care about what I'm doing. I think that's the part of it. It's not like I feel like I have to shoehorn myself into everything I do, because I try to keep myself out of it. But my interests, I shoehorn into everything. And the fact that the particular approach they're asking me to do with the uncanny post-mortem artwork was, it's very much talking to everyday people who've had strange experiences. And I started to think, well, why don't I start off with the places where I used to play as a kid? I'll start there, So then you're thinking about Barton Fields, and you've got spooky sort of silhouettes of swings and playgrounds and stuff like that. And you put those in a strange context, and suddenly they become really eerie. And I'm clearly not the only person that thinks that way, because Julian House, I think he's called, he does all the Ghost Box record stuff. He did a title sequence for Matthew Holness's Possum. And the opening titles of that are very similar. They are places that you see in the film, but there's also a lot of that sort of hauntological stuff where you're referencing the past and presenting it in a new, sort of slightly disturbing way, I think. I love all that.
And if you needed some reminding about his place in the horror scene, Ashley was invited to the Masters of Horror dinner. He explains how that came about.
The Masters of Horror dinner was it was a thing that Mick Garris, I believe, started up in Los Angeles years ago. And it was because all these horror friends of his, people like Stephen King, Toby Hooper, Wes Craven, Stuart Gordon, all these people, and most of which have died now. He was desperately trying to, like old mates trying to get together at Christmas, he was trying to get these horror people that he'd worked with over the years to gather, even if it was just for one day a year, just to meet up in a sociable setting and just catch up, but also he knew that inevitably that projects and collaborations would come out of it. And he kept it going for years. And then last year he decided he was going to try and do a UK variation on it. And I remember that Danny Robbins was at the one last year, and people like Reese was there. And then weirdly, suddenly out of the blue, about a month or so ago, Mick Garris contacted me and says, "We're doing another Masters of Horror UK. Would you like to come?" You're like, really? It's me. And it's like, yeah, you're great at what you do. Okay, come along, it'd be great. You said you won't know everyone, but you'll be surprised how many people you know here, because there's a few of them you've worked with. So again, like Reece Shearsmith was there, Steve Pemberton was there, Jeremy Dyson was there, Neil Marshall was there, Leslie Manning, who directed Ghostwatch, was there, who I'd never actually met. It was quite funny because we were looking at each other thinking, have we met? Like, no, we haven't. We both know Stephen Volk really well, but we've never met. And Stephen Volk was there. So, but there were filmmakers there from Spain and from Denmark and from Germany. So it was it would kind of culled some people in from across Europe as well. And it was amazing. Just went there and we just spent a few hours just eating, drinking, and chatting. And it'd be interesting to see if any of the stuff that was discussed that evening will actually come to fruition. Because if it does, it would be amazing.
Ashley, along with wife and Hell Tor organiser Sue, is the first to say how important it is to pootle off to film festivals to hang out and meet people, make connections, and be inspired. They are places of mutual support. And that's what Hell Tor not only aims to do, but is doing.
I enjoy going up to Fright Fest every year. I mean, this year I didn't because I went away on holiday for a week. But I go there for the social side of it more than anything, because I've got a lot of friends at Fright Fest, like Jake West and Mark Morris, Paul McAvoy. And there is an element where you just think, oh, I've got to travel all the way up there, and oh, I've got to do this. And they always stay up really late, and oh dear. But it's lovely meeting the people. And there is an element when you're in I think in any business, but especially it seems in the creative arts, the socializing and the networking is such a huge, crucial part of it. You have to do it. So much work that I've had over the years has been by just meeting up with people in different environments at different festivals. It's if your film is showing somewhere, you turn up so you can talk to people about it. Well, they've seen the film and then they can turn around, they can talk to you and ask you about stuff. And so many times I've then been subsequently asked to animate for people's films or create something for them. It's a huge part of it. And that's one of the things that we've tried to do really with Hell Tor, is this idea of creating a space where we invite interesting people to be part of it, people quite often that I've come in contact with on my travels, but then to be in an environment where people who are where I was a few years ago can just kind of go, could I have a chat with a writer and get some advice? Could I talk to a film director who literally worked his way up from nothing? Can I talk to a film producer? What are the chances of doing this? And it's about talking to people who know what they're doing because they've been doing it and they've established themselves. And that's what we're kind of hoping to do with Hell Tor, really. As much as it's about showing some cool films and getting some great guests down, it's also trying to bring people in, because as much as people like to talk the talk, there's an awful lot of pushing people out, I think. And one really lovely thing that happened last year is that I was really keen on kind of encouraging Bex from EK Productions. She's brilliant. She's really good fun, and she's totally into what she's doing. And when I saw the teaser that she'd made for the Medusa box, I really wanted to kind of encourage what she was trying to do. She's trying to make this Dartmoor set horror film that's got a really interesting concept behind it. And it was amazing because last year at the festival, we brought her into the fold with all the guests. So she got to chat to everybody. She got to sit and have dinner with them. She got on really well with Jake West. So she organised to go up to Fright Fest this year. And she went up there, so she got to meet loads of people at Fright Fest, and she got to hang out with like the editor of Starburst magazine, hang out with Jake, like proper networking. But it was this kind of thing of feeling like, if come on board. I mean, I'm more than happy to introduce you to people because I know what it's like. I remember. And if I hadn't had people when I was desperately trying to get Bawley Rectory up and running, it just would have fallen flat in its face. But I was lucky. I met some nice people who just went, well, let's make this thing happen. Let's get it across the finish line. It's so easy to look at everything in terms of like us and them, but really doesn't have to be that way at all. You create a genuine community when you help people and you introduce one set of people to another set of people. It's all well and good, saying that you're going to create this environment or this committee and you checkbox this and you checkbox that, but then you don't see any results. Sometimes it is just a face-to-face of, here's a Devon-based filmmaker, she's doing something really cool, I think I'm going to introduce her to some people at our festival because I really want to see the film that she's talking about. It doesn't have to be any more complicated than that. It's just encouraging people and not being threatened by people doing something, or doing, even if it's something vaguely similar to what you're doing. It's just encouraging people to keep going, because I'd much rather have, if you're going to be like a little army of weirdos, I'd much rather have that safety of numbers and have as many of us as possible out there spreading the word.
And you need that army of weirdos around somewhere, because it's hard making things, especially at the start, especially if you're working to fund your life as well as your work.
There was a period during the production of Brawley Rectory when it got really hard. I wasn't really earning an awful lot of money. I was kind of working part-time at a graphics studio, and I got made redundant like another time. We was really struggling, and I was wondering whether this was just an absolute folly making this thing, or trying to make this thing with no money. There was no kind of arts council support or anything like that. It was literally just crowdfunding, and everything else went on a credit card. And I was on my knees with it. I still got old emails to Tom Atkinson, the producer, just going, I don't know how we're going to get through it. And he's like, we'll get through it. But it was Julian Sands. I remember he was speaking to my dad, strangely, on the phone, and my dad said to him how hard it was and how much we were struggling to try and keep going making this thing. And Julian Sands just said, if it was easy, everyone would do it. It is hard, and it takes tenacity and a lot of endurance, but you've just got to push through it to the end, and it will be worth it. And we've kind of carried that through. I never forgot that advice, and he was very encouraging for the entire time that I knew him. And it's very sad, actually, because about a month or two before he disappeared in like the mountains, we were organising to meet up in London again. We were going to try and meet up and have a few glasses of wine and chat about ideas I had for projects and things. And then, suddenly he's gone. So we've kind of carried that, his advice, and turned it into a little kind of credo thing where with Opportunity Hour, we want to celebrate filmmakers that haven't had it handed to them on a plate, I think. There's a lot of filmmakers I know who are a little bit dilettante, a little bit kind of, they can afford to do it as a hobby because they don't have their futures to worry about, as opposed to working at something really hard because you have to survive, where it's a risk. Where making a film is a real risk because you're spending time where you could be doing your crap job, crap 9 to 5 you don't really want to do, but you're taking time away from that to make something which you hope is going to plant a seed in your future and make it better. And we want to kind of celebrate filmmakers who've taken that leap, and that have got to the end, whether it's a feature or whether it's a short film, whatever it is. It's like people up against adversity. So we are going to, we've created the Julian Sands Endeavour Award, and we will be presenting it to a filmmaker this year at Opportunity Hour. So
this year's Hell Tor has a theme of ghosts, which is a wonderful opportunity to air Brawley Rectory, Ashley's groundbreaking horror feature. It not only cemented a burgeoning reputation, it lifted the whole scene. So what's Ashley's relationship with it now?
I get this with every single thing I make. I even get it with things I've made like 6 months ago, that I'll look at it and think, yeah, that's about 40% success. That bit's good. That bit's really not very good. And I get that with everything. Brawley's quite weird. I've got a weird relationship with Brawley because it reminds me so specifically of a time like when Lily was born and sat there animating it like in the dead of night next to the baby monitor and things like that. I've got very affectionate memories of that time, albeit through rose-tinted glasses, because they were really tough times. We were struggling, but we were happy, if that makes sense. A little bit Charlie Bucket kind of environment back those days. I still see big problems with it. There are lots of things in there I know that I could animate a lot better now. I've learned so much in the, 8 years or something since I finished it, 6, 7, whatever it is. But yeah, I've got an affection for it because it not only is it like a little marker in time for me, but it was also the thing where it was almost like a proof of concept, because it meant that by making something that I really wanted to make in the way I really wanted to make it and putting it out into the world, when people seemed to like it, and then I subsequently got lots of work out of it saying, we like that, and can you do something similar for our project? Or we've not seen somebody tackle, material like that before. Could you do something like that for us? The fact that it was something heartfelt, it wasn't cynical. I wasn't just trying to chase a trend. It's like, I'm going to do this and hopefully someone will like it, and putting it out there. And then for that to pretty much lift me up to being able to do this full time all the time. It's pretty amazing. So I've kind of got Borley actually got a lot to thank it for, really. I'm grateful that I made it, and I'm grateful to the people that helped me finish it.
Not only did Borley Rectory add super spectral juice to Ashley's career, the shared history and chitter-chatter around it helped resurrect a series of Usborne books that became a cult through their connection to a legion of fans from back in the day.
That was all just accidental, really, because I mean that the whole Usborne Resurrection thing literally came about because we delayed the release of the Blu-ray. We were going to rush it out. And we're just like, oh, what's the point in doing that? It's taken me 5 years to make the goddamn thing. Why rush the Blu-ray out? Let's make people wait a year for it. So we've got lots of time to work on this. What should we do? Let's make some features. Jake West said, I want to make, ironically, a feature-length documentary about the making of it because it's such a weird film. It's like, fine, if you think you can fill up the time. But then the other thing, I said, there's one thing I really want to do. I really want to get in contact with Usborne Books and talk to them about the influence that those World of the Unknown books had on like an entire generation of kids. And I said, I know for a fact I'm not the only one because I used to chat to Rhys Shearsmith about it all the time, about how much we loved those books and were obsessed with the illustrations and the photographs and things. And all of that Usborne Resurrection stuff all came about when Mark Morris managed to track down Anna Howarth at Usborne, and she'd just taken over publicity and like marketing and things, and she just went, "That's brilliant. That is brilliant." And then when she realised that Rhys was a fan, it's like, right, we're gonna republish these things. And she got Rhys to write a forward, like an introduction to them. She got John Coulshaw, I think, wrote an introduction to one of them, whether it's monsters or UFOs or something. But it all came from that inquiry, which the Guardian didn't mention, of course. But they did a big feature about it, saying about, oh, it's amazing how these books have come around, and everyone, like Nick Frost is a massive fan, and Rhys Shearsmith is a massive fan, and like poor Mark Morris and me, we didn't even get a mention, but it's fine. It's fine. We did our good work. We just walk off down the highway knowing everything's fixed. It's fine. We don't need the accolade.
Filmmakers, film fans, horror lovers, who should go to the Hell Tor Film Festival?
We get a little bit of money from the BFI, like Film Hub and stuff. And one of the questions that they invariably ask is like, who is your audience for your festival? And ours is really quite eclectic, I think. In terms of the programming, I think there's definitely an element of a talking pictures kind of crowd, because there's definitely a love of kind of vintage cinema. I don't like to think of my cinema as vintage, but increasingly it's becoming vintage. But it is that people that still love the films that came out in the 40s, generation that were kids in the 70s, we're all in our 50s, now. So there is that element of it. But yet at the same time, a little bit like the animation clubs, we're desperately trying to encourage people that have just started making film. And it's this idea of bringing them into the fold of something. And as much as, they'll get a chance to meet people like Rhys Shearsmith. They get to chat to people like Kim Newman and Jonathan Rigby. Claire Louise Amias is going to be there this year. She's making a smash with a theatrical run of Haunted Shadows and things. So many different interesting people from different backgrounds. It's this idea of you can get to meet these people and you can talk to them. When I was younger, I vividly remember actually, when I was about 16 years old, the Fangoria Weekend of Horrors came to London. And Fangoria was just this glorious, bloody star that's just shone over my entire world when I was a kid. I was obsessed with it. But it was always so remote, before the internet. The idea of, I'll just pop over to LA to a convention. So that's never going to happen. You might never even get to LA. But it was coming to London. I thought, well, that's almost doable. And it had, I think, people like Clive Barker were going to be there, who I was obsessed with. And it felt magical that it got a little bit closer, but, it was still way beyond my means, and I couldn't get there. But I remember the excitement of thinking, I'd like to go and meet these people that I have such admiration for, and not just kind of gush and get everything signed, but just talk to them about why I found their work so interesting and whether they could advise me how I could carry on doing stuff that I loved. It wasn't just fanboying. I wanted to talk to them with a genuine interest. And I think that's something we're really trying to carry through with the festival. It's this idea of, we've got these wonderful guests like Graham Humphreys. I've loved Graham Humphreys stuff since I first saw the first Evil Dead VHS cover. And now he's a friend. He's going to come down and he's going to talk about all the different work he's done over the years, all the extraordinary stuff he's still doing. But I can chat to him, and we just chat to him about different things we've been working on now. But if there's people who want to get into graphic design or painting posters or anything like that, he's your man you should have a chat with. He loves a glass of red wine. So he will at some point be in the bar and you can talk to him. And that's what it's all about. There are people who are just going to want to come listen to the talk or, watch the films, and that's great. It's brilliant. It's for them too. But it's also for people who have a deeper interest in things and would actually like to get more involved.
Hell Tor is at the Exeter Phoenix from Friday the 26th of September to Sunday the 28th. See everything that's on the Exeter Phoenix website, where you can get tickets and full festival passes. And you can find out more about Ashley's work, including Ball Rectory, on the D&CFilm site. This has been Insight from D&CFilm.